Welcome back, Winning Plays Podcast. Brian, Robb, Rich Levine. B-Rob, it is the last day of September.
Stop right there. Don't lie on
I
this
know
podcast.
it's cliche to freak out about where the time is going, but that was the quickest September in memory. In this case, it's not too bad because in this case, the next month, October, is the return of the NBA. We are less than a month from October 20th, Madison Square Garden. Celtics at Knicks. And I think next week, so preseason starts next week. Is that right? First week in October?
Monday night, TD Garden, Orlando Magic. Real strong start to the schedule. A lot of young guys.
I was gonna say Evan Fournier revenge game. We don't even have that. Is there any Orlando? Is there anything that you guys can drum up?
Yeah,
some side
Mo Wagner revenge game.
Mo Wagner revenge game. That's it. That's preseason. That's preseason one kind of narrative right there, and I love it. And I think so. Next week, if we don't have to have a special podcast about Mo Wagner, we're going to do a couple preseason episodes. That should be fun. And until then, let's talk about media day. Let's talk about the beginning of training camp. Let's get ready for the first month of the NBA season.
Indeed. So it was it's weird just to be back in the building, Rich. This is the first time we've had access to the Auerbach Center, the practice facility, since 18 months, literally here. So we've actually been able to see some of practice. We've been able to talk to guys one-on-one for the first time this week. And so that has been I think it's honestly I think people are actually happy. A lot of guys are just happy to talk. Like some guys actually want to shake my hand and stuff like that. Which
Nice.
You would know.
Josh Richardson, I hope you didn't shake.
Yeah, right. I know. Josh, no, we were waiting on that one. But I'd say if you look at just this week as a whole, I think one of my first main takeaways, and this came yesterday, was Jaylen Brown kind of coming out on the offensive about I don't really think this is a real narrative, at least not among us, but among some people, of whether him and Tatum can collaborate or play well together on the court, or do they get together well enough off?
Or if they like each other,
if they like each other,
exactly.
Yeah. And so he kind of came out swinging about this yesterday. I don't know if he read an old tweet or an article. There really hasn't been much of this narrative, I think, recently, but something about this ticked him off over the summer or even into last season. And he was coming out saying they have a great respect for each other. Their relationship is growing.
But he did say they're best friends. That means there's problems, Brian.
Right. So
no,
exactly.
Yeah, no.
But that is this a real? Is this a real narrative, or is this just something? If it gets them fired up, all the better. Whatever it takes. But it was fascinating to see that coming up. Yeah,
I don't
that's
know.
fair.
What's the percentage of real narratives in this world? I think it is very possible. Two things can be true. Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum can not be best friends off the court, and they can work very well together on the court. And I think the biggest word that Jaylen said is respect. Right? It's a relationship founded and built on respect. As long as you get respect for each other and you just happen to be two of the greatest basketball players in the world, I think that's a pretty good combo. So yeah, that's not a narrative I necessarily worry about, right? We talk about Belichick Brady. I think a few people are talking about that this week in Boston. That again is a relationship where two guys were not very friendly, but happen to have some success together. Maybe it's a little bit different when it's two players, but people can put some differences aside, even if there are differences. Let's just assume maybe that they are not two peas in the pod. Even if that's the case, when they're on the court together, I have never seen anything that would suggest that they can't coexist, thrive. Let's say not even coexist, that they can't thrive together.
And I think the biggest part of that is, people look at last year. They were 500 last year. Their problem last year was not Tatum and Brown playing together. Their problem was pretty much the rest of the team. And I think, again, a lot of what was done this offseason was trying to reconfigure that. Now, if things don't look great again this year, then, not that that's even the next place you look at it, but then, that might be a bigger topic as you look for 2 or 3 years on loan as other, superstar names potentially become available. But for now, it's hey, you got these two guys under contract for the next 3 or 4 years. Find pieces together around them that make more space for them particularly offensively, that takes some pressure off them defensively. And now we see what the success they found over their first couple years of the career together when they were, superseding expectations. That's obviously the spot where they want to get back to here. And I think the kind of we'll see what the supporting cast looks like, but I think it's set up kind of nicely for them to have a year like that.
Certainly better. And you said that you said that their problem last year was not Jaylen and Tatum playing together. It really was them not playing together. It was the
Right.
fact that that Jayson was struggling with COVID, that Jaylen was out with his wrist for the playoffs. I mean, those are all big factors. And again, I don't. If this season does not go as planned, I think that we will be able to do many podcasts detailing the problems before we get the relationship between Jayson and Jaylen. And I'm glad, it's like one of those things. Like maybe, but Jaylen coming out like that, he can nip it in the bud, and there won't be those questions, or maybe it becomes more of a narrative now. Maybe people want to ask more questions about it. But as long as they don't care, as long as maybe he's just getting this off his chest and now he can focus on everything else, I am not too worried about those two guys being the problem for the Celtics team. But what is like? What do you say? We've had a very optimistic offseason, right? They've made a lot of moves. They've given us a lot of reasons to say, hey, this year things will be better than the last. But give me the reason it might not be. If it's not the relationship between the Jays, what is going to if something brings the Celtics down this year, what is it?
I think it is. I mean, it could be a variety of things. I think shooting, number one, offensively, will be it on the perimeter. They brought in a lot of guys that can handle the ball. They did not bring in a lot of reliable shooters. Shout out to Garrison Matthews, who just got that 20th man into camp. I think the odds of him or another shooter making the roster, I think, are high, because I think you're going to need that when nights when Schroder or Richardson or Smart or whoever is getting all the open threes they want and missing them. And
Is,
so
is Hauser going to make the team? Is he?
Yeah, Hauser is there. Yeah, so he's on two-way. So I think he's locked in.
So you think there's room for both, like a Matthews and a Hauser on the final 15?
I think so. I mean, there's a couple guys. There's gonna be a lot of competition for that 15th spot. I mean, Jabari Parker is obviously in the mix there, but we'll see if they don't feel good about how the veterans, the more experienced guys are shooting in camp that have the question marks. I think that's where you have a shooting specialist too, or at the end of your bench. So just to have that option at the end of games, because even last year, I feel like who was the reliable shooter on the bench? That there was no one. There was no. I mean,
Right.
Neesmith you wanted Neesmith to be that guy, but he wasn't that guy yet as a rookie. It's Pritchard, was just a full guy in the rotation. Like he was. They were already asking, I think, almost too much of him at times. They were leaning on him heavily because he was the guy they could count on there. So if they can have a couple more of those guys that aren't really in the rotation, but I think are options to mix in when they need it, when they're in a shootout or just want to maximize floor spacing. That's the thing. And again, Al Horford figures into that too. There was a lot of Al Horford hype today at Camp, Rich.
He even threw out a best shape of his career.
Best shape of his career, 35 years old, rejuvenated. Ime Udoka brought up the fountain of youth, making a strong case for the starting five.
I saw not just a case, a strong case.
A strong case. Five. So, I mean, for you, Horford, Rob Williams front line, is that enough shooting and offense when you have Smart at point guard too? Is that going to work?
I mean, it depends on Al Horford. It's like, I think that like if he's playing the four, right? If that's the plan with him in that starting spot, like he's got to shoot 40% from three. I was looking, his career high was the 17-18 season. I think he shot like 42.9%.
Yeah.
Because you talk about like guys having to maybe rely on Hauser or Matthews down the end of the bench. You're going to need Al, Richardson, Pritchard, or Neesmith. I would say like at least two, maybe three of those four guys to bring it most nights. To all four of them, 3-4 of them have very solid shooting seasons. And because they're going to get open shots, right? That's the one thing we know. So for me, like if Al Horford can consistently hit 3-pointers, you disappeared. I lost you. There you go. Can consistently hit 3-pointers. You need him to start in that case, right? And the other thing I'm interested to seeing is what they do with Rob's minutes to start this year, because that was another thing that Ime kind of hinted as. They might slow play his minutes again to start the year and really make sure that he can work his way up, get his body in shape to be a guy that maybe plays 25, 30 minutes a game every night.
Yeah, I mean, the question there is, do they know? I mean, even that's true. Could Al start at the five and you bring Rob off the bench? Could that ever happen? And again, to protect those minutes. That's what I wonder in terms of balancing those lineups.
And then what do you do there? Is Tatum your four?
Yeah, Tatum's your four,
Richardson
and
your two?
Richardson's your two, and then you play small. You're very switchable with that lineup. You have more shooting out there, assuming that Richardson's a better shooter than Al, which may not be the case, but I think that's a situation where that's a lineup against a lot of teams, against teams that play super small that you have to think about going with. Because I'm not sure Al and Rob playing together is going to work well against
Yeah,
those kind of teams.
and you take that five, and again, that you're assuming that Al is going to shoot better. You're assuming that Richards is going to shoot better than he has the last 4 years. But like in a starting lineup, when Marcus Smart is your fifth best 3-point shooter, like you can live with that. Like
That's true.
that's dangerous,
It
right?
is. And if his shot selection is where you want it to be, then that works out very well because he can, hit those wide open shots at a, 38, 39% clip. And so if that's the guy that teams are going to help off of the most and he is going to pick his spots there, then that's going to be a pretty good spot for this team to be. If he's your third or fourth best 3-point shooter, then that's where we ran into problems like we saw last year.
And has there been much talk like about him really rolling with the point guard identity now, where he really is not a guy who will play some point guard over the course of the season, but right now he is the starting point guard for the Boston Celtics. And do we think that mentality could help Marcus's shot selection even more if you can really roll with that title?
I certainly think so. I mean, for him, he's talked about it, just embracing it and saying, "This is what I was naturally in my career," and we've seen the team consider giving the keys to him at this position at many spots, but it's never fully happened over, like, especially heading into a training camp. Whether it's been Isaiah, obviously, Kyrie, Kemba, etc. So now you have it where, okay, Marcus, you are starting here. We have some help for you in Dennis Schroder, and Richardson's going to be another guy who's going to handle the ball. I feel like a lot, but Smart fully embracing, saying, okay, I am this guy. I'm also have been paid, so I don't have to worry about like putting up numbers just to put them up, and to make sure I get my payday down the road. Now he can fully, not that he wasn't all about the team in the first place, but I think maybe that just takes a little bit less of the onus off of him being like, okay, I need to at least get to 10 points a game or whatever, just so I don't look like I'm putting up a nothing on offense.
Um, when the games do begin, B Rob, who do you think is going to surprise you the most? Who's your candidate this year to have the breakout season for the Boston Celtics? I think there were a few candidates, right? You got Pritchard, you got Neesmith, you got Romeo, maybe. Who's your pick?
I think Pritchard's the default, but is that really a surprise at this point if Pritchard played? Because I think he almost is coming off of, I think last year he was the talk of camp. He backed up immediately in that, first 10, 15 games of the year by literally winning them a couple games on the road there in Indiana with his shooting. And so now I kind of expect him to be more interesting because there's more competition for him coming off the bench there. But
Right,
I
that's
think
what I say, because you were talking about Marcus's help, and you said Schroeder, and then you said Richardson was going to be handling the ball a lot, and that was three guys before you get the Pritchard. So you think he'll get an opportunity?
I wonder if he's just going to be more off ball. Like he'll be out there, but I don't expect him to be initiating offense a ton because I think those other guys we just mentioned are probably better at it than him at this point. I know in summer league he showed I think some improvements with being able to distribute, recognition in the pick and roll and, finding guys as opposed to always kind of looking for a shot maybe a little too much at times. But I think given how well he shoots and how well he is with a catch and shoot, I almost would want him off the ball more rather than initiating because I'd rather have him being passed to for the open three than him passing it to like Richardson or Smart or whoever for it.
So it's like a best case scenario. Maybe he could play like a Seth Curry kind of role, like
Sure.
what Curry did for Philly
Right.
last year.
I like
I
that.
could live with that. I'm not even saying that he's Seth Curry even, but like at that kind of role, I think he can do that. A guy who can handle the ball if you need to, you know, can initiate a little bit of offense if he needs to. Again, if he's not the focus, if Peyton Pritchard is out there, and it's funny, every single one of these guys that I think about, there's a difference. There's when he is out there with the Jays, everyone's going to be a lot better
Yes.
when they're out there with Jaylen and Jayson. It's just you're going to get more open looks. You're going to the focus is going to be off of you. You're going to have an opportunity, and that's what the Celtics are going to need. They're going to need those guys that can step up and make other teams pay if they want to focus on the Jays. But yeah, and Ime was talking about that a little bit. I don't know if that was today or yesterday, but the idea of staggering the minutes for those guys to make sure that one of them is out there at all times, which I think is important. But even when only one of them's out there, that's going to be a challenge for this team. When we talked about what could potentially bring them down, it doesn't have to be a Bradley Beal, but it does seem like they are still missing, one talent.
Who do you think is going to be the third highest scorer on this team? You can go in all different directions here.
Yeah, I'm going to say Marcus.
Yeah,
I think so. I think that the Jays will be 27 and 24, right around there.
Yep.
And I think the next one I see Marcus like around 12, 13. I could see a lot. I could see Pritchard. I could see Neesmith. I could see Al. Who knows?
I think it's going to be Richardson. Just based on he's a guy who's been able to do that in his career, put up 14, 15 a game, and he's not going to get starter level minutes here, but I think he'll be probably close to 28, 30 a game most nights, assuming that his offense is where they want it to be, assuming that he's playing better than he was in Dallas last year when he was dealing with COVID for a lot of the year. But I just think, like you said, in that second unit, when it's only Brown or Tatum out there, that's a guy who can kind of be a little bit of a shot creator and can get into the mid-range. He'll take what teams get him, and I think that's a comfort spot for him, and I think that's somewhere where he's going to try to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and again, if he can somehow dial it back, as I'm just looking at his career, the last 3 seasons, right? The points per game go from 16.6 to 13.7 to 12.1. The 3-point percentage goes from 35 to 34 to 33. Things it's just all trending down from where he was, but he also hasn't had an opportunity. Well, that's not true because he played for a pretty good Philadelphia team as well. One where
that team was a mess. That team was a mess. I mean, like that was the Al team with Embiid. So that, like, offensively, they seemed like they were a mess in terms of spacing and stuff like that year.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, that's probably a decent guess. Like I said, I think that batch of players, probably Marcus and Richardson near the top. And I don't know, what's the ceiling for Rob Williams' points per game? That's probably going to have a lot to do with the minutes, right?
Right.
But is he going to average double figures?
I'd say if he shoots 85% from the field, like he's been close to the last couple of years, he get to that. But yeah, if he gets over 20 minutes a game, I think he's definitely averaging double digits in points because the lobs are going to be there. I think Smart is a better passer than like Kemba, for instance. So that, I think the chemistry there will be pretty strong. And especially if they go with a smaller lineup look and have Richardson or another just ball handler out there instead of Al, I think that could open up the floor even more for Rob in terms of, those lobs.
And again, if Al's hitting his 3-pointer, that's going to open up the floor as well. And Al is obviously a great passer.
Yeah.
Who would be able to find Rob in those spots. But yeah, you see last year only played 19 minutes a game, 18-9, and averaged 8 and 7, almost 2 blocks. He gets that up to 25 minutes a game. That could be a double and 2 blocks a game player right there.
One guy we have not brought up yet, and we talked to him yesterday. I'm curious, is Cantor going to have a regular role in this team on a nightly basis? I guess. So would you want him to or no? Or you want him just to go?
No. I think that I'm pretty sure that given everything that there will be weak stretches at a time where Cantor gets some run. I think he's going to play, but I would not be shocked by a lot of DMP CDs in his future. Would you? I just don't. Again, and I guess it depends on the matchup as well, right?
Right.
If you're playing Philadelphia, you might need him a little bit. Not that he's an Embiid stopper, at least he's a body that you can help tire Embiid out a little bit. So there are players situations like that where it might be beneficial, but generally speaking, I don't know. Everywhere he goes, it's kind of the same, right?
Pretty much, and that's I mean, he's on the veterans minimum deal now for I think that reason. Um, I do wonder if they do start the double big with Rob and Al, whether that is a way to get Cantor, 12 minutes a night to say, okay, you can back up Rob and we'll play Al some at the 5-2, but like we'll give you those minutes, and so to kind of keep you happy at least in the regular season. And we have seen him have success with like a Tatum second unit essentially 2 years ago. Like it was like kind of a motley crew there of like him and Wanamaker and I can't even remember who was like Carson Edwards, whoever was playing on those Ram nights, and Tatum would drag that group to like pretty successful lineups, whereas Cantor would just gobble up all the offensive rebounds from the putbacks. So it is one of those things where he'll have hot and cold stretches, and I don't mind him being out there for that because I think he will eat up minutes and hopefully, keep other guys healthy. But I think you're right. Like big picture wise, you're probably better off going smaller because if you're playing Cantor, that means guys like someone like Langford or Neesmith, one of those guys is probably going to get squeezed out of the rotation on those nights. And then that becomes, I think the development of those guys is far more important than, keeping Cantor happy.
No, yeah, keeping Cantor happy is not. I can't imagine that's a priority. I think he's a nice, warm, big, strong body to have in case of emergency over a long 82.
Or just resting Al on a back-to-back, like if they're going to do that this year. I wonder if they're going to do that.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's where you strategically use him, when needed. But I just don't think that it's a nightly. Okay, here come the Cantor minutes. I hope we don't have to live with that on a nightly basis. I don't really think we will.
What did you catch much of Dennis Schroder's media day? He had some comments about your Lakers, Rich, saying
yeah, I think I
about
did.
the fit was not great, and he wasn't able to give the Lakers everything he could. And I also think Anthony Davis talked about how they just didn't have chemistry. Him and like he couldn't get lobs from him. So I am curious to see how he obviously didn't come here with any promises of starting or anything like that. He took a little bit less money than he could have gotten elsewhere to be here. It sounds like he consulted with everyone. He even said he consulted with Sam Presti about this offseason, which is I wonder how often that happens if you just call up an old GM of your team and be like, hey, where should I go? But I wonder if this could turn into like a Bobby Portis in Milwaukee situation where he can become not just an integral guy for this year, but like if the team does see some success, maybe, it somehow expands over 1 year, even because there just aren't any starting jobs for him elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I would love for Schroder to turn 6'10" or whatever Bobby Portis is. I think that certainly helps a little bit. But yeah, I also can understand someone not, going to LA and not wanting to exist in LeBron's orbit. Like that's not always the most pleasant place to be. Like and to me, if anything, like Schroeder's comments, they do sound healthy. They do seem like he's made some peace with what happened with the money and made like he said in that interview, like he's already made a ton. He's already got his family in a really good situation. I'm sure more than he ever could have imagined growing up wanting to be a professional basketball player. So again, the money is not anything. Would you like to have an extra 84 or 94 million guaranteed? I'm sure. But either way, he's got generational wealth. It would seem, as long as he's and then we're not even counting the DS17 app, right? Like once that starts cashing in that, he could just retire. But no, it's good. He seems healthy. He seems in a pretty good place about it. And even if the money isn't important, he is playing for a contract, right? Like this is an audition to get one more really big deal. And I think hopefully he's at the point in his career where he realizes that the key to doing that, like he'll have a better chance of getting paid if he is a quality part of a really good team, as opposed to like a guy who is petty and focused more on his own personal stuff and ends up, being a guy that someone could look at and be like, the Celtics might have been a little bit better that year if Schroeder had just, sucked it up and been a positive presence and all that. So we'll see. Like I've been kind of on the fence with him ever since it was even rumored. So I'm not fully on board. I'm not ready to say that Schroder is going to be that positive impact that maybe he's pretending to be at this moment. We'll see. I'm excited to have him prove me wrong.
It will be fascinating to see just how well he blends in. He was out on the court with Marcus Smart after practice today, just doing a shootout. And so that's what you want to see if you're a Celtics
Who
fan.
won that?
I don't know if
Did
they
they
were
reinforce the backboards?
Yeah, it was a long. I honestly didn't make it to the end of it. It was a long. It was a long case of around the world, and I had to do some work, so I didn't catch who. But it hopefully that's competition that gets shorter as the training camp goes on and camp gets.
Or let him get it all out and
yeah, sure.
practice.
Just get. Hopefully, it helps with their shot selection there, but. All right, so we'll put a bow on it there for the first. I guess this is the first official winning plays of the 2021-2022 season, Rich. We're here. We're going to have actual games.
Now.
The future is now. We're going to have actual games to talk about next week. Exciting preseason games. See how, Hauser and Juwan Morgan and everyone else kind of steps up at the end of the bench. Even though I wonder how much. I mean, this is preseason for Ime Udoka too, so maybe he'll want to do a real dry run of his rotations and whatnot out of the gate. It'll be fascinating to see what it looks like.
Exciting stuff. So when is the first preseason game?
Monday night.
Monday night,
TD Garden. Fresh off Brady versus Belichick. You can just follow that up with a Celtics Magic on Monday night to make a full Boston sports weekend. But in the meantime, hit us up at Winning Place Pod on Twitter. Rate, subscribe, review us on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get you're listening, and follow Rich at Rich_Levine. I'm at Brian T. Robb, and we will talk to you guys with more preseason thoughts and some player previews coming here on the Winning Plays Pod coming next week.